Well, that didn't go like I anticipated. Well, hi, and welcome back to the dramatic conclusion to our wheel bearing replacement on this 2010 Ford Explorer. So, as I mentioned before, we're doing this with without all the fancy tools and all the super cool equipment. So, taking the wheel off, got a breaker bar. Now, just a disclaimer on this, there's one point where when we go to put this back together and I go to put that axle nut back on, I'm going to use a torque wrench, and the torque wrench I use is going to be kind of expensive. Now, you can get cheaper torque wrenches, but it's going to be one that I'm recommending you get. A torque wrench that needs to go up to 250 foot-pounds. Now, I think the torque spec is like 190 to 250. So usually, and the reason I say that is because usually you want to have 10% of the torque wrench's range above what your spec is. So if you have a torque wrench that goes to 250, you don't want to use it, especially consistently, for 250 foot-pounds. The one I have, I think it goes to 250, but we can torque it to 225, which would take 10% of the range off. So that'll fall within the specs. So right now, I got a breaker bar, a socket. Now, granted, I'll be honest, this is a nicer breaker bar and socket, but you can use the ones you get at Harbor Freight or lower end ones, and they'll work just the same. So we're going to take this wheel off. I did loosen the lug nuts up already, so they'll just come off pretty easy. And when we take that axle nut off, the two ways you can do it is if you have a wheel where you can gain access to the axle nut with the wheel still on, leave the wheel on the ground and loosen the axle nut that way. But if you don't, what you'll have to do is, like, I'm going to take the wheel off, and then I'm going to lock the brakes, and then I'm going to use the brake system to hold the rotor and everything still at axle still, while I use a breaker bar to break loose that axle nut. So let's get started. And the wheel comes off. We'll roll it out of the way. Set the lug nuts down with it. Alright, so here's what we're going to do. This brake caliper bracket and the caliper, you don't have to pull the caliper off the bracket. We're going to pull the bolts for the caliper bracket and pull the whole thing off, and we're going to hang it up and secure it out of the way. Then the rotor's going to come off. Actually, we'll have to break the axle nut loose first. We'll break the axle nut loose, and then we'll pull that off, pull the rotor and all that off. We'll drive this, the stub of the axle. We have to drive it back. We don't have to push the axle out. We don't have to remove the axle. We just need to break it free so that when we unbolt this wheel bearing, this hub assembly, we can pull it forward and it won't get hung up on there. But we'll talk about that as we get going through it. Right now, I'm going to lock the brakes on. I'm going to use the little prop rod that I can put on the brakes. You may just have to have someone hold the brakes for you. Let me go do that real quick. Alright, so this should be a 32. I think it is, because I doubt it's 31. Anyway, we'll see if that is going to hold this. I got the brakes locked on. There we go. Oh, look at that. It's smooth. We'll go ahead and spin that off. That is going to be one of your big battles for this job, if you're doing this yourself, is getting that broken loose and off. Your three big pain points are going to be this, breaking that loose. Maybe sometimes you live up north. Oh my goodness, good luck. I feel sorry for you guys. And then sometimes these bolts on the back. Usually on these, once you pull those bolts out, it's not that big of a deal to hammer the bearing out. But we'll walk through it. You'll see. That nut sits out of the way. Let's go take the brake released, or release it. Okay, so you'll need a basic socket set, and honestly, I wouldn't be too picky with the brand. Obviously, if you buy stuff, you pay $3 for the whole socket set, you may have longevity issues. But my sockets, most of them are Snap-on, but Craftsman, even some of the Harbor Freight brands, are, you know, 25 bucks for a set. Not a horrible deal. So the two bolts back here, we're going to get on them, and they are, of course, going to be too big. Is it a 19? It can't be a 19. Nope, it's going to be a 21. Look at that. So, oh, that's a 20. Anyway, so I'm going to have to step up to 1/2 inch. Okay, so, oh goodness. Get my seat out of the way there. So what we'll do is we'll take this and we'll turn it, as you saw it was wanting to turn before, so that we have better access to the back here. Let me see if I can move you and get you a better shot. So I honestly hope this turns out well with the sun right behind me. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but this is the back side of the caliper, and this is the top bolt, and the bottom bolt is down here, and I'll see if we can get on that and show you that better. But I think they're 21s. Watch me be wrong. This is where is it at? There we go. There's a 21mm socket. Stick it on there. Hey, look at that. Now we're cooking with gas. Alright. Let's find where, there we go. And they're pretty tight, but you know, they're not unworkably tight. You know, they'll be alright. You'll be alright. You get it off. Now, then that one will just spin out, but we're not going to take it out. Let me see if I can, let me see if I can get you a shot of the bottom one. Alright, there you are. Don't blame me if you fall, because I don't know how that camera is staying where it's at. Alright. Oh my goodness, I almost farted. It's a dangerous thing. Okay. Let's go ahead and spin those out. Man, I'd sure like to be using my impact about right now. But you guys wouldn't be if you don't have one. If you do have one, just use an impact. But if you don't, I'm just going to show you this all can be done without it. So let's spin it out. Now the top one. Alright, let's go back to the front. Okay, so those two bolts we took out for the caliper bracket, so we'll just take it and it pulls right up and off. And for the moment, we're going to set it right here where it won't fall, because I got to go get something to tie it up with. But this rotor, when these get some wear on them, there can be a ridge right here on the outside edge where the pads have kind of sunk down past it. And if that's the case, you may have to just kind of pry on this to open that up, to push those pistons back in a little bit so that it can come out over that edge without tearing up the front of the pads. But this one came off pretty smooth. So let me go get something to tie that up. Alright, looks like this is what we're using today. Bendable wire here. I know, everyone tells me you should take this to the scrap or salvage metal, whatever. That's right, I like it for what I use it for. But we'll just put that up out of the way so it's not hanging on that hose or anything. That'd be good enough. Alright, so are we gonna be out of the way of that? Yep. Okay, so Next, this rotor, we're going to take it off. Let's see if it's okay. It's a little stuck. We're going to hammer that off. Okay, so if you're replacing the brakes and you're putting new rotors on, you can hammer this off the back, knock it off however you want. But in this case, and in most of your guys' cases, you're probably not going to be putting brakes on this at the same time. So you'll want to hit this right here on the face, kind of where these marks are at. But you don't want to, what you don't want to do is you don't want to take your hammer and go swing here and hit and run it down the side and lay these threads over, because then your lug nut won't go on. So just to protect from that, I've got this that I use that everybody makes fun of me for. And I'll set it right there, and then I'll hit the end out here. Because if I hit the end out here, now I may take my thumb out, but I'm not going to mess up those threads. So just like that. Alright, so there's a wheel bearing. Now let's turn this back to the front. Now you can take this and drive it back, and let me zoom in a little bit on it here. This is where you want to be careful. Granted, you've got this whole lip right here where there's no threads, but some of these have threads all the way up out to the end. So you want to hammer that back in, try to drive it loose, and you can press, get out of here, bug. You can press right here where it's got that little indentation in the middle, but you can, and I caution you, be very careful. Just give it super light taps. See that? I barely touched it. It's already loose. And I tell you, there's people up north that would envy me for that. They would fight that for an hour just to get that to come loose. So that's loose. We don't have to worry about that. But what we have to worry about is you can see the play in this wheel bearing without all the leverage. Yeah, it's bad. Okay, so next what we have to do is we have to shift this so we can get to the back. There's 3 bolts on the back of this we'll take a look at. We'll pull those 3 bolts out, and then this wheel bearing will be almost all the way out. Okay, so can you see there? Can you see it? Here's what we've got. This bolt, and then there's one you can't see, but it's right over here. And it's going to be basically the same process for all of them. You loosen them up. Now they may be kind of tight. What do you want to bet? Are they 15? They look 15-ish to you? They look kind of 15. Now this little nub right here is kind of in my way, so you may have to rotate it so that is as out of your way as possible. Hopefully, we're just going to get on here with a ratchet. Wishful thinking, right? Little extra leverage. Put some weight on it. There we go. Now it's coming loose. Got that one loose. We're going to go to this one. And you're going to be right up against the boot. Just be careful, don't tear that boot or anything, because then you'll be having to pull the axle out. You don't want to do that. There we go. Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. I'm not going to name names, but there's probably some other YouTubers that would be jealous of me taking a bearing out this easy. And look at that. Alright, all 3 are loose. Just going to spin them out. Okay, so the moment of truth. You're going to take a hammer, and you can take this right here and knock it forward to try to knock it out. If you have a lot of problems, you can sometimes turn this to where you have access to the back, and go get yourself a bolt, same thread pitch as one of these, and thread it in as far as you can, all the way in, through that hole, but where there, maybe a bolt that long, so you can smack on the back of that bolt. You'll ruin it, you'll mess up the bolt nut, but you can sometimes do that to drive these out. This, I don't think we're gonna have that much problem with. Famous last words, right? So I'm gonna get on, just kind of keep pressure on this on one side with the knuckle, not the knuckle, yeah, off the knuckle. I'm gonna tap on the other side, and I'm gonna drop this thing on my knee, I know it, but anyway. Just keep, now I can't keep pressure on it, look at that, okay. Look, let me smack it a couple times first. Uh-oh. Here we go. Now you gotta really wallop on it. You don't want to hit and break any of these ears or anything. Now this sensor is coming with the new one, so if I nick that, I'm not too worried about it. Look at me talking about how easy I had it, and then it doesn't want to fall off like it's supposed to. So we'll just spray some right here. Hopefully that'll work its way in there. And a lot of times, if I've had trouble with these, I take my air hammer, get right here on the corner, on the back corner here, and just try to turn, not this portion, but the portion that bolts to the knuckle, turn that, break that loose. But at the moment, I'm trying not to break out all the tools, show you guys this can be done, even if it's a pain. Maybe I'm starting to see a little gap. So I'll show you here when I get it off, but what I just nicked there was the bolt holding the sensor onto that. So if you're not replacing the sensor, be careful. Now that I got a little gap showing, I'm going to spray some more penetrating fluid in there. Well, I cut the sensor off, but that's alright. And from looking at that sensor wouldn't have ever come out anyway. It's all corroded and gunked up in there. I tell you guys, I'd love nothing more than to just grab a hammer and knock this thing off, but that is not what this video series is about. So I'm really trying not to do that. The thing is, when you're hammering here, you've got this dust shield, and if I have to take that off in a minute, I may take it off just to not hit it. But you don't want to hit it and ding it up and mess it up. That's not professional. Like I said, this that I broke off here, I wasn't too horribly worried about it because I know it's coming with a new sensor. So I wasn't worried about if I hit that or not. But if you were going to keep the sensor and replace the wheel bearing and put the new sensor in it, which I've never really had luck that I remember doing, you'd want to be very careful. You want to work on getting that sensor out before you went and hammered around and end up busting it. So let's hammer some more. I'm going to tell myself we're making progress. I don't know if it's true. Little bit at a time. So, right along here is where I'm starting to make a little bit of progress. not as much down here. So I may end up taking this shield off so that I can hammer on the other side. But like I said, I'd love to grab my air hammer, but the point of this is to show you you guys can do this without all the big fancy tools. So let's carry on. I'm gonna zip this off real quick. And by zip I mean take, because I'm not using my impact, so there's no zipping. No zippity zip. And this is just so I don't damage it when I'm trying to hammer and I can get to that other side. Alright, turn this a little. Now, what I want to be real careful of is this is kind of right in the line of fire, and so is this. So I don't want to hit that and break it off, because this is, you know, cast iron. It'll break. It'll just shatter off. So I want to hit here without hitting this or damaging the tie rod end. So let's go. Alright, so partially because I want to take a second from hammering, and partially because, you know, just because I'm going to let that set with the penetrating oil for a little bit. I got a couple things I'm going to do, then I'll come back and check on it and see where we're at. So, because it may be hard to see and tell, but I'm not hitting this thing from the front. I'm trying to have the hammer curve so that here I'm not just hitting it like this, I'm turning it so that I strike from the back out. No guarantees of how successful I'm being, but I'm trying. Oh goodness. Okay. So you want to be careful doing this, but I got a decent gap here, and if you mess it up at all on the space, you're going to have to go fix it. But I'm going to take a chisel and I'm going to try to work it down in there to spread it more. Oh, look at that, it's not working at all. Not even a little bit, I don't think. Alright, we're not too far, we'll keep hammering. Okay, so I know that kind of seems like it's weird why I'd be hitting it back in, but if they get, sorry I'm out of breath a little, I'm swinging that hammer. If they get kind of cockeyed in there, they'll want to wedge, and sometimes just that vibration will help finish breaking the rest of that corrosion loose and help it come free. Well, that didn't go like I anticipated. Have to fix that later. Oops. Be alright. I think we're going to spread this a little more now. That might be the bite we need. This, dangerous. Don't do this. Ten seconds. Sorry. No hat. 10 seconds. That's what I want to do this in. This is practically out. Let me show you. So, as you can see, we've made a bit of a mess. This is the bearing. This doesn't matter. But we've hit right here a bit. And it's not going to be too horrible to have to clean up, but we'll take a file because that does need to be flat by the time we go back together. But look at that, that's practically out. All right, I think that's it. Let's look at the mess we made. Okay. All right. So as you can see, we've got a couple spots right here. These look worse than they are, but we're gonna take a file and clean that up because we gotta clean it up. It's gotta be flat before we go back together. So, bearing out. Let's fix this real quick. So, I'm going to be honest, I hate doing this like this because now I've about got this finished up. It's going to be flat, it's going to be fine. There's not going to be anything wrong with it because, I'm going to use my file to go over and make sure it's flush all the way across. It's extra work, which I'm not opposed to extra work when it's needed, but the simple fact is, this doesn't look professional. It doesn't look, like... Doesn't look like you knew what you were doing, but simple fact is we'll make it right before it goes back together. It'll be flat, it'll be flush, and we're gonna clean it up. There was some rolls of thunder a couple minutes ago. Kansas weather, it'll change on you in a heartbeat, and we're due for a chance of rain this afternoon. So I'm gonna shortcut part of this because I'm gonna use my little .co with the abrasive disc on it to clean it up. Now you can go, I don't think there's any arguing that you can clean these up with like Scotch-Brite pads and that, take a little bit of time, WD-40 even, clean it up. So that, I think that's a little different because you can clean it up by hand. That it just takes a little extra time, but I am running out of time because I got to get this done before any rain comes in because rain on a camera is never good. But like I said, I hate doing this when it looks like this. I mean, I'll make sure it's right before it goes back together, but it's not the way I prefer to do it. Now, for those of you that have these, or you go get one, because you can get them decently cheap, not using a lot of pressure, like hardly any pressure. Let the tool do the job, let the tool do the work. Just working on cleaning up that bevel. And it may still have a rough looking texture to it, but there's no rust left. I'll knock what I can of that out of there. That's good. Alright, so this, you can still tell where the dings and nicks were made, but this is flush. And I took these things are incredibly flat and true. So if you keep just steady pressure and you go across, you can touch up and make sure and those I can feel as that's flush. It looks funky, which is one of the reasons I hate doing it, but it's all right. Let me grab the new bearing and we'll walk through putting it in. Okay, so here is our new bearing, and you want to pay attention to make sure that you put the sensor at the same location that the sensor was at before, because that's awkward to try to run it when it's coming out the wrong way. You end up putting it somewhere, it'll get damaged or something. So you want to get that splined on, get it going through the center, and then guide this back in, and we'll take the bolts and put the bolts in through the same holes, obviously, because it's going back in the same spot. The neighbors are working too. Actually, they've been remodeling the house next door. People who bought it, I don't think they've moved in yet. I think they're just remodeling it at the moment. Silly sockets. I hate trying to get these small sockets off of here. Let's give you a wider view here. Alright. 15. We're gonna go. Now you don't want to run one of these all the way down and then try to catch the other ones up. It's better, yeah, it started. It's better to kind of work them all down evenly. That way you suck that bearing down into there pretty flush and evenly, and you don't get it cockeyed in the hole. Nice and flush. Now remember, once you snug these down, you don't want to go tighten this down and suck that in all the way, because you still want that extra play with that axle being able to move to go and make sure these are tightened all the way down. So don't do that axle nut until you've got these all tight. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't look up the torque spec for these. Usually I'd take my impact and zip it down. It's probably somewhere in the order of 40, 45 foot-pounds, maybe even as low as 35. But you want them nice and tight. You want to crank, I mean, you don't want to break them, but you get a feel for this. If you're doing this, you look up the torque spec for these. I don't know it offhand, but I've done plenty of these bolts. They're going to be tight enough and not too tight. Now, don't forget to put this back on. I've done that. Oh goodness, I've done that before. Taking one of these off something, get the job done, breaks everything all back together, feeling good, finished. Look down on the toolbox and oops, there's this and the little bolts that go with it. And sometimes it's like behind the bearing that you just pressed in. Oh goodness, that's a mess. Okay, let's tighten these down. Oh, we gotta put the baby socket back on, don't we? Alright, so let's look at how we're gonna run this up. And it's one of the reasons I haven't messed with the wire until now. So, as you can see, it comes out of here and it clips right into there. It just kind of goes through there. We'll push that conduit through there. And then this is where the wire goes. And having left this in place, I now can follow that as a template to just walk right up it and replace the whole thing. That way I don't pull it all off and then forget where everything goes. My goodness, that bolt was barely even tightened down. This up here, if I was saving this, you know, I'd be more careful, but just pull that right out. They just push in. This will clip right in there. This will push right in. And the farther I go up, this more I think maybe this is an aftermarket sensor. And this, I think, just sits on a stud up there. Let's go up top, take a look. Down back behind the alternator, underneath the wheel well there. Focus. That right there, that's where that sensor comes up to. And then it comes over here and plugs in right there. So let's do it. Move that out of the way. I'm kind of going on a prayer here, hope you can see me, because I know it's kind of iffy. Gonna reach underneath there, pull that up off of the studs that it's pushed down on. Old one out. New one up in place. Push it down on those studs. Right there. And it sets down inside this retainer. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a little plastic or metal retainer right next to it. And then we plug it back in. Yep, it didn't click very loud, but it clicked. Alright, let's wrap up. Okay, so the wheel bearing's in. Video's not done, don't worry. Gonna put the wheel on, put it back down on the ground. I'm gonna tighten that axle nut down, and then we're gonna see if this thing drives. Okay, just to make the first part of it go faster, I got a little adapter, put my 32mm socket on my ratchet, just so we can run it down until it's snug. Oh, there we go. All this is doing is keeping the hub from turning while I crank the nut down, just until it touches and snugs up. And then we'll torque it. Alright, so now that it's snug down, we'll throw the brakes back on so that we can tighten that all the way. Rotor goes on. excuse me, undo our caliper from up here. Put that off in just a second. Keep it oriented the right way. Same way. Oh, those pads are kind of wishy-washy moving around. Let's get it put right back over just the way it was. Yep, I was just holding it at the wrong angle. There we go. We'll grab our bolts and get them started back in. Look at me as you go. There we go. And sometimes on these, the best way to go about this is to get one of these bolts started. Not like that. Get one of these bolts started. If I can actually do something and talk at the same time. I've yet to prove that I'm capable of that. So like get this first one started and then just push that down, and you know it'll be right on the arc where it's gonna line up somewhere. So you can get this bolt in the hole and ready to line up, and then as you shift it, you'll feel it drop in. There you go. Use that same adapter because we had to step up to 1/2 inch, and I'll just use this to run these down. And again, you guys know where the holes were at. You watched them come out, so I'm not going to try to shove the camera back down there for these again. All right, those are tightened down. Let's get the axle nut. It's wanting to turn on me. I'm sure it's almost there. It's slipping. One moment. All right. There we go. Got the click. Okay, so the ABS light is obviously still on from the code that we set testing it. So we're gonna plug in. We're gonna go through this again. Let's see if I can get you a good shot. Oh, wrong way. A shot of it. That's about as far up as I can get. It's connecting at the moment. And actually, you want key on, engine off. Let me shut this door for you so you don't hear that beeping. OBD2 codes. Systems. Let's go to ABS. Yep. It's one momenting, please, us. So, this red button right here has a picture of an eraser. Erase the codes. Yep. It's going to beep at us probably. Look at that. It didn't like being talked to. It happens. So, it's going to double check. No ABS DTCs. So let's take this thing for a quick spin. Let me zoom you back out. Okay, so to answer questions that everyone is probably learning in their mind, yes, I put the wheel back on. I torqued the wheel. My goodness, I'm sweating. I torqued the wheel down to torque specifications with, well, I don't know if it was actual specifications, but I torqued it to 110 foot-pounds with the torque wrench that I had there. So let's see if this thing acts the way it did before. If you guys remember, we got a little bit out of the driveway and it went, and it didn't like us trying to go. So I hope that tripod's pretty steady. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, look at that. Here we go. We are cooking with gas now. All right. Come up to a stop. Yeah, it was totally a complete stop. Doobie-doo. Guys, am I dark? I'm dark. I can't with the light outside and that. Guys, this is fixed. We're good. So, yeah, I know it wasn't the most ideal, and I didn't like what we did to the knuckle. We got it fixed, and it's okay. It's not going to cause a problem. I just, I don't know. I don't like having to do that. But I wanted to show you guys that it could be done without breaking out the air hammer, you know, having all that stuff, the fancy pullers. You can hammer that off, but my goodness, man, my arms are going to be sore tonight. I still got to go to work yet today. So, I hope that this video has helped you. I hope that you were able to diagnose and fix your own problem, own vehicle. So, thank you for taking the time to watch it. I'll put a couple links in the description to this guy's YouTube channel. So, silly me, I didn't realize the camera ran out of storage space right as I was about to finish the outro there. So anyway, like I said, I'll include some links into the description that you guys might find interesting that relate to this video, and also to the guy's channel who owns this truck. If you guys are interested in fishing, he's a great guy, super knowledgeable, great channel. Go check him out. You may enjoy it. Anyway, thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.